everybody. I have 5 minutes spare in the kitchen today and I am going to make some beautiful milk bread. Now, if you haven't made milk bread before, it is beautiful and soft and fluffy. But I'm going to do mine with a twist. I'm going to add some cranberries and raisins and some spices to make it more like a fruit toast, and it'll be absolutely delicious. So, without further ado, I've got my milk bread recipe on the screen, and if you've never seen a Thermomix before, we've got guided cooking, which means it will tell me step by step what to do. So, milk bread, start cooking. So it's going to first bring up my scales, and I'm going to weigh in full cream milk. Now, if you didn't want to add milk to this, you could add a nut milk instead as a dairy-free option. And instead of the butter, you could use coconut oil if you wanted to be dairy-free, or even olive oil, but make sure it's light tasting if you do that. And then we've got some butter, which I have chopped up into little bite-sized pieces. And we want 20 grams of fresh yeast, or if you're using dried yeast like this, pop in 2 teaspoons. As you can see, my measurements are very accurate. I just tip in about 2 teaspoons there. Now, it's really important if you're using this type of yeast in Australia, but particularly in Queensland, make sure you keep this one in the fridge or the freezer so it keeps nice and fresh and doesn't go stale. So we'll pop in 60 grams of sugar. Now, if you wanted to make this a little more savoury, you could leave out the sugar here. But for me, this is going to be our breakfast sweet loaf. So 60 grams, just raw sugar in there as well. And then we're going to, it's telling me to add my measuring cup into the lid and turn the dial, and it's preset the time, the temperature and speed for me. And now I've got a note saying to grease a large bowl and set it aside. But instead of greasing a large bowl, I thought I would show you my Thermomat today, because these little babies are a silicone mat and really flexible that you can use to do any of the breads or pastry work. And it will mean that you'll keep your kitchen nice and clean, but you can also bake on these. So our mats have got, they're heat proof up to 280 degrees for these big ones, or we've got ones half the size, like a baking sheet, and they are 260 degrees, which is really, really amazing, because it means that you don't need any baking paper anymore. Now, the good news is that you can get these from the Mix shop. Now, if you haven't shopped in the Mix shop before, on my Facebook page there's a shop now button if you want to grab anything. Or if you don't want to pay for these, if you know somebody who would love to have a Thermomix on their bench, you can host your own event, either virtual or in person, and get these mats for free if somebody buys, or a great discounted price if you just introduce us to a couple of friends. So, I'm going to show you how I prove my bread in here, because when the Thermomix is done kneading, this mat will actually save a whole heap of time in incubating the bread at the right temperature and getting it to that first proof stage in about 20 minutes or so today. When you're making bread, it's important not to rush things, because if you rush, you're going to get doughy bread, or more of a scony, dense texture. So what we're aiming for here today is a lovely light, fluffy loaf that is just delicious. And I'm going to plait it into a lovely plait and glaze the top and show you how to get a bakery quality finish on your homemade breads. And honestly, guys, if you haven't made bread or pizza or pasta or anything like that in Thermomix, these are 5-minute jobs. And as you can see, I'm standing here waffling on while the Thermomix is doing all of the hard work as well. And you can hear that is chiming, letting me know. Now, when you take the lid off your Thermomix, you'll notice that it will minus the weight of the scales. So if you hit the tear button here, it will clear the scales for you and get you back to 0. Now I'm going to weigh in 550 grams of baker's flour. Now, You can, if you wanted to, you could use plain flour, but baker's flour has a stronger protein in it, which will give you a more stretchy result in your breads, but it will probably keep that little bit better for you as well. So if you wanted that really lovely bakery finish, then do go the extra mile and get some baker's flour. You can buy it from the supermarket, and it does come in a 5 kilo bag. So if you're not going to do tons of baking, split it with a friend. We're going to add in 1.5 teaspoons of salt. I'm using pink Himalayan salt. You could use sea salt if you wanted to, or a spiced salt if you've made one in your Thermomix. And at this point, here's my variations. I'm going to add in about a teaspoon of ground ginger. And you could add whatever spices you wanted. And I'm going to put in 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. Cardamom would be lovely in this as well, or mixed spice. I'm going to pop in some beautiful organic cranberries and organic raisin. I haven't measured them. I'm guessing it'd be about 50 to 80 grams of those. A good couple of handfuls. And this is the beauty, guys, of making your own things from scratch. Means that if you like your fruit toast more fruity, add more fruit. If you like it less fruity, add less fruit, more spice, or whatever it is that you want. Now, when you are using your Thermomix to do the kneading function, you'll see a little wheat sheaf symbol on the front, and it's as simple as just turning the dial. Now, if you weren't using a guided recipe, you can actually access all of the extra functions simply by swiping right on your screen. And you'll see things like scales, dough mode, there's a turbo mode for doing mincing if you've never used that before, a pre-clean mode to do the washing up for you, a blend mode for your smoothies, there's an egg boiler. It's so cool. You can actually put your eggs straight from the fridge in here with room temperature water, and you select soft, medium, hard, or variations of all of those, and it will do your eggs perfectly every time. There's a kettle mode, warm up, chicken, a rice cooker, but also fermentation for things like making your own yogurt. Can save tons of money doing that. A slow cooker and a sous vide mode, so you can have perfectly cooked proteins every time. Now, when you are using a mode, there's more information that comes up on the top right-hand corner. There's a little info button. So if you're not sure how to use any of those modes, you can click onto there. Or if you want my ultimate guide on YouTube, you can find Cath's ultimate guide to get the most out of your TM6. And I put everything in there, from your functions, your accessories, how to change the sound settings, how to put it in travel mode. You can jump to whatever section you need as well. So if you haven't followed me on YouTube yet, jump on over to Cath's Thermomix and subscribe. Now, when you're kneading in the Thermomix is going to do all of the elbow work for you. So what you're trying to achieve here is getting the gluten in the flour to relax and get nice and stretchy. And that will allow the bread to rise nicely, so you get that beautiful, light, fluffy bakery result. All right, you can hear that that's all finished. And now all we need to do is, look at that, that's kneaded beautifully. You need to tip this out. When you turn your Thermomix upside down, there's a little black knob. If you turn that back and forth, the dough, oops, you can't see, literally just fell out of the bowl, and you can grab those little extra bits with your fingers. Watch the blades though, they are sharp. Or what I like to do is pop the Thermomix back on, put the lid on, press the home button, and then flick the blades for a second. And then it'll spit all of the rest of the dough out to the side. So if you're making anything like pancakes or cupcakes or, cheese puffs, anything like that, see how that splats the dough right off, so you can get your hand in there. Make sure you're going around clockwise, whether you're using your hand or a spatula, because the sharp side of the blades is on the opposite side. I will form this dough into a ball like this. And if you're using the bowl with a tea towel method, pop this into a bowl with a damp tea towel over the top and let it double in size. It'll tell you how to do that as well. And then I'm going to wrap mine up in my mat, tuck the sides in, and, oh, I was going to show you one more tip. If you've never made bread before and you're not sure how long to prove the bread for, it is a bit of a, it's a bit of a science when you're making bread, but I like to get a cup of water and a piece of dough about the size of a pea, and if you pop it in the water, you'll see it sink to the bottom. When that floats, that means enough little air particles have developed in there from the yeast feeding on the sugars, and that will be ready for first proof stage. So then you can form your bread rolls or make a plat or loaf, and then prove it again for another 20 minutes or so, and then pop it into the oven, and it'll be perfect. And as you can see, it has doubled in size, which is exactly what you want. And I was saying earlier, it's really important not to go by time so much when you're making bread, but to go by the feel of the bread and the size of the bread and the texture. So if it's a little bit sticky coming off your mat, use the bowl scraper. Now you can get these in the mix shop for about, I think they're $3 or $4. They're nothing much. So I'm just peeling that off. Now, if you have a little look at my Thermi screen here, it is telling me to plat the dough. So I'm going to cut this in 2/3 and have some nice even pieces. Instead of just having an everyday loaf, we're going to create something a little bit special. So I'm going to roll them into even sized logs. And sometimes you'll find the fruit, when you do a fruit loaf, it might fall out a bit. That's okay, just tuck it back in. If they're a little uneven, it doesn't matter so much, but if you can try and get them as even as possible. If you've got a fatter one, you can kind of rob some from one and put it on the other. But okay, I'm going to pinch the ends together. 1, 2, 3, pinch. And then we're going to plat it just like a normal plat. And again, pinch the ends, fold them under. Okay, now you can either cover that with some plastic wrap. I'm just going to show you that. How cool is that? So we want that to double in size again, which will take about half an hour in this temperature. Okay, here we go. Our dough has been proving for half an hour now. So we've made the dough, we've made a plat, and now I've covered it with my large thermomat, and I've got it on my small thermomat, so I don't need to disturb it now when I pop it into the oven, which is really cool. So I'll just take this large mat off, and you'll see that it won't stick. So it won't ruin your dough like maybe if you put a tea towel on top. Sometimes they can get a bit sticky. How does that look? It looks nice and big now, which is great. So I've just got a lightly beaten egg here and my little all-natural pastry brush from the mix shop. And I'm going to give that a good coat of beaten egg. Now, when you glaze bread, the different types of glazes will give different effects. So if you're thinking coming up to Easter, hot cross buns, for instance, so hot cross buns, you would put a lovely sugar syrup glaze on top to make them shiny and sweet. This one, just a simple egg, will make it shiny without the sweetness. And it just seals in that top layer and makes it look really professional. So if you were really in a hurry, you could skip this bit if you wanted to. Sometimes if you just want a bit of colour, you could use a milk glaze as well. All right, so that's all done. Now you can see how nice and shiny that is. That's great. I'm cooking it on my Thermomat. This is the small one, just on a baking sheet. I've got my oven preheated to 180 degrees, and this now is going to cook for 25 to 30 minutes. One top tip, when I am cooking bread, while it's rising in the oven, it's called oven spring, and it really loves a humid environment. So here's my weapon of choice. I have an old roasting dish that I spray with water and get it really nice and steamy. And this will heat up quick in my oven. This is a thin one. I'm gonna pop that over the top of my bread, and that it'll be nice and humid. So that will mean that my bread won't form the crust too quick. It will keep growing and get nice and tall. And then I'll remove this halfway through the cook after about 10 minutes, and then it will get a lovely golden brown color. I'm gonna get any of these accessories, like a TM6 spatula that has a flexible tip, bread's bowl scraper, I should call it, and the pastry brush are all in the mix shop, and you can find a link that says shop now in my Facebook page or in my link tree if you're watching this on YouTube or Insta. Here we go, everybody. After cooking our bread in the oven, our milk bread with raisins and cranberries, cooked it in the oven at 180 with my roasting lid on with all of the steam in it for about 10 minutes. Took the lid off, cooked it for the rest of the 20 minutes, and check that out. That is one ginormous and delicious raisin and cranberry loaf that you can enjoy slathered in butter or toasted. You could put Nutella on it if you wanted to for something super sweet. But my top tip is, when you make fresh bread, don't get tempted to cut it when it's fresh out of the oven and steaming hot. You need to let bread continue the baking process for a few minutes while it's out of the oven and resting. And then when it's just warm still, you can cut it, or you could let that cool completely and cut it the next morning, which is tends to be how we roll in our house. It's totally up to you when it's your bread. So if you've enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel, Cath's Thermotrix. Or if you're watching this on Facebook, like and comment and tell me any feedback, or particularly any recipes you might want to see me make. Or if you'd like to book in a cooking experience with me and you and a couple of friends, you can grab some great host rewards as well. So, and don't forget, you can get any of the Mix Shop accessories or buy your very own Thermomix through the Shop Now button on my Facebook page, or in my Linktree links that are on my YouTube or Instagram bio. Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoy making your own hot, delicious bread. See ya. Happy cooking.